No problem. I'm in a quiet room. We're all good.
Fantastic. Happy days. And so how are you? I've not seen you since Sonisphere.
I'm good. It's a confusing time. I mean, the whole process is just so intense right now between everything that's going on in life and career, and it's just it's a good thing. Everything's really good. It's just it's rooted in this same old process that's been going on forever, and it's taken a little bit more to wrap my head around now than it has recently. Overall, here's my long story long. I'm good. I'm actually quite good.
Fantastic.
How about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fantastic, thank you. No, it's been just an incredible summer, and so I really could not complain about a second of it, I don't think.
Good.
Which is brilliant. And I'm currently learning to scuba dive, and I cannot even start to describe how much fun I am having with that. So
I tried to. I went through the lessons. I got the snorkel, but then as soon as I went underwater, I panicked. It scared the fucking shit out of me. And it wasn't even like a real fear. It was like some sort of weird claustrophobia or something. And I came up, I breached like a sea lion, and then promptly there ended my foray into scuba.
Oh wow, that is really sad. I don't know. I think some people really hate it. Like the first time I tried breathing underwater, I was just like, this is never going to happen. And then he made me lie on. It was horrible. But then he made me lie on the bottom. And then when I stopped thinking about breathing because I was so busy faffing around attempting to lie on the floor of a swimming pool, I realized that I'd actually been breathing normally the entire way through. And I was like, oh, I can breathe underwater. There we go.
You see, it was 8 years ago when I gave it a shot. And it was right at the time when I was coming off of smoking weed and everything, and I was looking for another kick, I think.
I see.
And I think that I gave up too quick in that scenario. So one day I'd like to try it again, because if you say it's that good, it can't be bad, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think definitely that when you're at so many different stages in life, like the same thing can feel so different depending on where you are, and so if it's something that you've been interested in, I reckon it's always worth giving it another shot.
No, that's a good point. Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's been weeks and weeks of interviews. It's like it's crazy to be you're confronted with your own process so heavily from the minute you wake up until the middle of the day every day, and it's crazy. It does a real specific thing to your mind, I gotta tell you. And it's nice to talk to somebody that I actually know, because fine line between where you are in your career and what you want to say versus what you should say. And
what you're actually allowed to say. It's really like, well, to be honest, I hate doing interviews. I don't like the album. I don't want to tour it. No.
I get it. That's exactly it. And it's like, I think the thing is, for me, I've been doing this for so long and so many years in a row, and the intensity of it recently has just been so fucked, right? Like between Retinal and Casualties and tours and 5 albums and 3 box sets and, and life and kids and family and all this shit. It's like it's gotten to the point where Pledge Drive, it was just so intense and has been for so long. My threshold for intensity is much lower than it ever has been, ironically. So, towards the end of it, when we get into the whole Ziltoid thing, as is the case with me in general, whatever's going on in my life is reflected in whatever I end up writing. It's like soaking it up and then stretching yourself out to see what color the water is. And the Ziltoid thing, it's just chaos. It's just, it's everything about my life has been chaos and for so long that when I stand back now and I'm answering questions about it and I'm listening to it and I'm thinking about it, I'm really proud of it. I think it's really cool. But then again, there's another part of me that's just like, well, you are fatigued beyond what you should be as an artist in a certain sense. And if your reflection of your current frame of mind is anything to be noted from, it's been a lot. And but I feel good. I mean, that's the thing, is I think as a person, as a man, as an adult, I feel strong and I feel in control. It's also the process now that I'm able to sort of objectify it with Ziltoid and everything. And like, we stand back from it, you're just like, this is what happens if you push in the direction that you have pushed for so long. It's, you end up writing about your own process as opposed to life in general, which is where it comes from, right? So it's been a battle for the past couple of months. But I guess, again, that's why the Ziltoid record is about a battle, because it's, it's indicative of this, right? It's intense.
I mean, do you reckon that this is why, I mean, you have stayed so kind of level-headed with it all compared to so many artists? I mean, so many artists, they get success and it goes to their heads. But do you think that's actually quite possibly because they need it to go to their heads in order to keep bringing out the same amount of material? Because, like, if you're writing a record, for example, about, like, girls and drugs and screwing, and then you start, like, girls and drugs and screwing becomes commonplace to you because that's the life you're leading, then you've constantly got to start pushing the boundaries of what you're actually doing more in order to do that. And so do you think that maybe the reason that it's so different for you is because you have actually kept that degree of self-awareness and kept yourself not, I mean, you don't act like a stereotypical rock star?
Well, it's the opposite in a certain way if you describe it in the way that you do. I mean, I write about what's going on, and if things keep getting more and more, then that's what it ends up writing about, and it manifests in whichever ways the compulsion leads. And for me, my goals have always been the same, and that's I want to be a functional adult. I want to be a better person. I want to be stronger for the people who I'm around. And if the catalyst for my writing continues to increase in intensity, then the result is just going to be a battle, because it's not a conscious thing for me to say, okay, I'm trying to stay level-headed or whatever. It's all bullshit. I've been through it for so many years that it's all bullshit. And I think if you start to subscribe to it, the first thing that happens is, like, there's ebbs and flows in everybody's career, of course. And for me, currently, what I do is more visible than it has been before. But it'll change. It'll go down. It'll go up. It ebbs and flows. And for me, when it goes down, I don't want to have been shitting on everybody in the off periods, because they're the people that are going to be there to work with at those points. And I think success and the intensity of being public and fear of people and all these sorts of things that come from the position I find myself in. My whole job, 5 or 10% of it is writing music. The rest of my job is processing it, trying to forget it, trying to, incorporate the experiences in ways that are healthy, or try and be nonchalant about things that can be potentially damaging. And I mean, as a result of trying to juggle the bullshit that comes along from that level of visibility is what comes out of me. I mean, where am I as a person musically? I mean, I'm much more along the lines of Casualties and Ghost or Key than I am Ziltoid or DTP, but it still plays a role, an active role in my creative process, because there's certain emotional and intellectual hurdles that are happening that can only be described with chaos, and a reaction to that chaos often for me is trying to find some sort of freedom within it. And the parameters that become more and more imposed as you get more successful are, well, this is what people expect. This is what people have a financial obligation to you and for you. And for example, with Ziltoid, I wanted to make Ziltoid, it wasn't even the music. I mean, the music is something that's relatively easy, but I've always wanted to do like the puppet thing, and it's always what I want to do. So having a soundtrack for it and having music for it is something that I can do because it's part of my skill set, but it's not the focus of it. It never really was. But after the crowdsourcing thing, I was all of a sudden in a position where I could actualize some of these creative parts of the process. But now the parameters have changed, where you've got label management, band members, expectations from audience, people who are maybe you push them too far with things like Casualties or Dead Lab or Ghost or whatever. And so it came down to, look, you can do your puppet thing, but we need to follow it up with something else. That you've done all the stuff with Epicloud, and we need to make sure our logistics are in line here, because it's fucking expensive. So basically, my whole process, at first I thought I could phone it in. I was like, oh shit, yeah, I got tons of material like that. All good, I'll make another record. So my compromise that I proposed to everybody is like, look, can I do my Ziltoid thing and hemorrhage money on it if I do something else? And that's how it started.
Wow.
But then as these things go, I couldn't just phone it in. I ended up halfway through it. I wrote fucking 40 songs for Sky Blue because I hated each one more than the one before. It was like,
shit.
I was like, this sucks. This is like a shit version of Epicloud. This is like a phoned in version of Addicted. And I'm just like, why the fuck did I commit to this? But then as I was working through it, I realized that the process of writing Sky Blue ended up being just really exhausting and really taxing, but very therapeutic for me, because all of a sudden I was thinking about, well, you're depressed. It's like you've been doing too much for too long, and all of a sudden all these people in my world, their parents are passing away and there's friends that are dying, and I'm just like, while I'm getting these phone calls that are incredibly depressing, I'm singing Happy Birthday 300 times in a row during the pledge drive. So it's like, you get a phone call and it's like, hey Deb, there's this incredibly fucking dramatic thing going on. I'm sorry, I can't deal with that right now. It's too heavy for me to think about. Let me call you after I finish work. And I hang up the phone and I go in and I'm like, happy birthday to you. And I'm thinking to myself, this is fucked. Like the combination of emotions, it was this collision of circumstance that ended up being what Z2 is. And I mean, when it was over, I was just like, what the hell, right? But the end result is something that started with me trying to like compromise for the sake of other people. Ended up that I managed to get a record out of Sky Blue that I think I really needed to get out. And now that the Z2 thing is finished and I'm able to objectively look back at the amount of chaos that by my own hand I put myself into, it might be the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I can say, you need to consider this. You need to be able to recognize the reasons for doing this. Are you doing it for other people? And if not, are you doing it for yourself for a reason that you're unaware of? And whatever those reasons are, the ramifications of it are that your life has been chaos, and that is within your power from here point out to cope with. However, we've picked a genre that I can't take a year off. Here I am being all dramatic and trumpeting about, hey, I'm going to take a year off after the Royal Albert Hall. I can't take a fucking year off. I've got people and everybody's on salary, and we don't have millions of dollars. We have to find a way. However, sorry to ramble at you, but the long story long of it for me, honestly, is if my process for creating music is what it always has been, which is to try and be more functional as a person, this whole era of chaos will be invaluable, because without it, you wouldn't have the chance to reflect on what this type of input does to you. You know, if you're a sponge, you soak up milk, you let go milk. You soak up piss, you let go piss. It's like, it's going to be what your input is. And it's only now that I recognize it's like, well, you have to control what your input is. You have to learn to say no is the thing, right?
And so does that mean that basically you're thinking, or you're saying to yourself that, you know, on a conscious or a subconscious level, that actually you've got to have some degree of misery or some degree of upset to create the kind of record that you did with Z2? I mean, could you have done that if you were in a fantastic place and you were happy and there was nothing else that you needed to do and you were just like, yeah, this is what I want to do, I'm happy, la la la?
Well, I mean, I think that would be a very romantic thought. But I think that...
You Canadians have an odd idea of romance.
Well, I think that maybe that's because it rains a lot here. I mean, I find that, you know, I'm not happy unless I'm only happy when it rains. I mean, it's like, but it's true. I mean, I think when I say romanticizing things, it's very easy to think, oh, I can only do it if I'm upset. I can only do it if that's not the truth. I can make miserable and angry music if I'm happy enough. But there's a certain type of misery or anger that produces something that is empowering, and there's a certain type that requires a lot of effort to overcome. And so the chaos in my life that produced Z2 was one that I managed to overcome, in my opinion. I think that the reason Sky Blue works for me is because it is an exercise in getting through it. Yeah, it's miserable, and yeah, it's depressing, this and that and the other thing, and it's chaotic, but you get through it. And I did. I didn't, you know, I'm still sober. I'm still functioning. I managed to remix it in the last minute, and it didn't send me into the loony bin. You know what I mean? It's like I did it. But there's only going to be so many times in your creative life where you're going to have patience to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's one thing to be writing about the upset that you might find in your life, because let's be honest, it's always going to be there. The idea of being in a utopian frame of mind where anger and sadness doesn't exist is just, it's a pipe dream. So it's always going to be there, but there's a certain type that requires type of effort that's separate from your creative process to achieve. And I really am proud of and can say that that's what happened with Z2. But I mean, after this, if you don't learn from it, you're just a fucking idiot, you know?
Yeah. Well, very true, very true. And so can you listen to that album now and think, I like this? Can you like,
totally.
Can you appreciate it? Okay. And has it soured your kind of thoughts on doing the whole Z2 thing?
No, not at all. In fact, the fact that in the last minute it was wrong and I fixed it when I didn't want to fix it. I wanted just to be done with it. I was so sick of it. It was so much work. But in the last minute, because I managed to remix it and remaster it and all this, when I hear it now, I think to myself, yeah, you did it. And it's fucking killer. It's just, and again, I think that's ultimately how this record is going to be defined for me, is that it could have just totally failed. For me personally, regardless of what people think of it. Yeah. For me, it could have failed because I was fatigued from all the other shit. But we pulled it together. It wasn't just me, it was the team, it was everybody else. We pulled it together. So now when I hear it, I think to myself, fucking hell, listen to that thing. It's just this intense, like the levels in which it had to go in order to be articulated as it was. It's just inhuman for the amount of time we had. So,
wow,
you know, I'm totally proud of it. I'm incredibly proud of it. But I'm like, okay, there's that thing I'm proud of. So let's think about it now. You know?
Yes, yeah, no, I mean, it's, you know, I think it's fantastic, but I think I don't really think you brought anything out that I haven't loved, and so I don't really know whether I can be objective about it.
Well, that's, you know, I appreciate that. But here's the thing: is for someone who's very critical of his own work, it's good, it's great in a way. But it's like, I just think that my next step as a musician, I think that the well is dry for me in terms of this direction, because I've been going down the DTP Ziltoid thing for 7 or 8 years now, and Casualties was something that I know. Tell me about it. Casualties was something that I really felt strongly about, and whether or not it's that music.
Honestly, that show was absolutely stunning. It was just incredible. I think what I absolutely loved was that you had such a wide range of people there, and all these hardcore metalheads that have come into, you know, kind of your stuff. a lot earlier on in your career, and they're all sitting there in a church in these pews watching this casualty show and loving every second. It was honestly, it was beautiful to watch.
Thank you, Chrissy. I mean, I love that vibe. I love doing that. I mean, the thing is, I'm just following it at this point. And whatever I do, I want to make sure I do it accurately and I want to do it well. No matter, even in the points in my life where my life was something that I wasn't particularly proud of, like Infinity or Alien, both those times, they were followed too. I remember those are very accurate representations of that period. And so is you too. So in that sense, my connection to a work for me is whether or not it's accurate. Whether or not it's one is better than the other, or someone like the heavy stuff or the quiet stuff or whatever, is not really my call as much as is it correct, is it accurate? And it's hard for me to even articulate right now because I'm trying to get to the root of how I feel about it, because I'm so proud of it, and I was so frustrated by it, and I was so into it, and I'm so over it, and it's like all these things are kind of culminating right now into a certain color, and I still don't know. So it's but the one thing I do know is again, following it where it leads, it's what I was supposed to do, so I did it, and then next ought to be interesting, I hope.
Definitely. I mean, it's impossible to kind of ask you this, so what are you going to be doing next kind of question. But, I mean, I would be hugely interested to know if the kind of, I wouldn't say pressure, because I don't know if pressure is necessarily the right word, but the kind of schedule that you have to stick to when it comes to the, the press, the getting involved in the rest of it, the promotion, all of that, would that put you off doing projects in the future this way? I mean, are we going to see you kind of go back to the more stripped down and DIY approach, or is that not something that you feel as though you could do at the moment?
Well, you see, that's a great question. I don't know, and I think that's the precipice right now. Because what I do know is in the past I run from these things, strapping or whatever. It gets to a point where it's this intense, and it's never been this intense. But it gets to a point of intensity, and my first reaction is like, oh, I can't do this. It's got to go small. It's got to be DIY. It's got to be all these things. But what I wonder is whether or not, A, that's just some sort of weird defense mechanism. It's a fear of failure and a fear of success or whatever. And then B, if the reason why the intensity is such as it is at this point is because of the way that I myself handle it. So if I can find ways to proactively cope with it, and it sounds super dramatic, and it's not meant to. But when I say cope with it, it's I absorb it, and I think I'm empathetic to a certain level with people in the audience to a certain extent, and as a result of that, it's the same reason I had a problem producing. It's like I absorb people's shit, and then some people can produce and then go home at night and watch TV, and they don't even they can forget about it. I can't forget shit. So my world, when it gets to the point where it's as intense as this, and people project or in either positive or negative ways, I have a real hard time tuning it out. And in the past. So again, it could be one of two things. It could be a fear of a lot of things, or it could just be an inability to process it efficiently. But the decision is going to be made by the next couple of months of me, I think, deciding whether or not deciding, but finding ways to cope, finding ways to if it's within your power, then it's also within your power to say no. It's within your power to define it and to delegate it and do all these sorts of things.
Completely.
So I hope that Z2 will entertain people. I hope people will really like it. I hope that
I can't see them not doing it. It's fantastic. I got pictures of the stage show the entire time I was listening. I was just like, he could have this and he could have this and he could have this and this is amazing. It was brilliant.
I think the thing is now that I'm more visible, it's like I have a hard time with compliments and I have a hard time with criticism. You know what I mean?
Yes,
but now it's
absolutely.
both of those things are way more than they ever were. It's like the
Wow.
people who dislike it really dislike it, and the people who like it way more than maybe is warranted, right? So for me, I'm kind of doing the same thing that I've always done, albeit with maybe a bit more pressure, a bit less this, and a bit more that, whatever. But I'm just like, holy fuck, it's like, it's not as simple as it once was. Just to be like, well, here's a puppet, and it's a stupid thing, and, you know, it's whatever. It's like, all of a sudden, it's the ramifications of all these decisions are much more than they ever were. And also the ramifications of your decisions, for example, of flippantly saying, I'm going to take a year off. It's no longer you're living in a one-bedroom apartment on your own. It's like you got a family and you've got people on a salary and all this shit, and you can't. So it's this is where it's at right now. And the record is a representation of it. And so when I got into making this record and the parameters, which were tighter on this record than anything that I've ever done, between what people's expectations of Sky Blue were, and even what my own, when I first started Ziltoid, there was no parameters for it necessarily, but now there's all these kids that like it. You know, kids like Ziltoid, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, he's saying cunt, and he's being a fucking idiot all the time, and I'm like, God, you know, even my own kids, my sister's kids, they're like, well, what's happening with Ziltoid now? And I'm like, oh, he's doing something horrible. You know, it's like, so there's a whole new level of parameters to it it was just so fucking confusing. And then, so essentially, again, I'm incredibly proud of Z2 because the workload for it was phenomenal and the outcome from it was powerful. So, done. But I think there's a part of me now that's just kind of like, you know what? These parameters to fight for making what I want it to do with orchestras and puppets and all this shit, I'm just tired of it right now. So it'll be good to get out there and tour it and have a blast with it without thinking in the back of my head, well, the next record I'm going to do is with an orchestra, and the next record after that's going to be this ambient thing. It's like, and I think, honestly, Felicity, I think that's what the root of all this has been, is that I think too far ahead in terms of projects as opposed to just doing it and then letting it evolve, which is why I love Casualty so much, because it evolved
completely
for the first time since Ocean Machine. Nobody cared. It was great. You know what I mean?
Wow. I mean, I saw a really fascinating article, actually. Well, a couple of fascinating articles, but those kind of linked in together. And the first was about women in relationships. And it was all about how once, like, a relationship started to go really successfully, the woman would then so often start to sabotage the relationship because, like, she was kind of thinking to herself, oh, you know, it's, I don't think I'm good enough for this person, therefore I need to prove that to myself so I'm right. But then there was another study that focused on the same kind of thing with creatives and people involved in the arts. And it's so documented that once people get to a certain stage, and you know, and they're starting to be on, you know, in that successful vein, they're just like, but I think I'm crap. That little voice inside my head is telling me I'm crap, so I've got to put out something really shit to prove to myself that I'm right, otherwise I'm wrong. And it's.
I think there's two things I would say to that. Number one, absolutely, of course, the self-fulfilling prophecy of, you know, I think that inherently an artist's insecurity is going to play into their motivation to, like, be validated on some level. And that, of course, as soon as people validate you, I think that a knee-jerk reaction subconsciously is to sabotage it. I mean, I've always been guilty of that. But I also think, and this is something that's been on my mind a lot lately, is once you're aware of that, I think it's also worth your time to examine if it is truly that, or if you've got another part of your process that has been independently evolving aside from the audience, aside from the expectations of it. For me, music is just a byproduct of life. And so its function in my world has been very specific. And then you get to the point where all of a sudden that function is indicative of a lot of other things in your world, in money or success or validation or things in ways that are separate from our people or prestige or all this shit. And then it gets muddled. And then once it gets muddled, I think that you get presented with two options. And one of them is like we were just discussing. Okay, if this is self-destructive, then your task is to confront that. That's one thing. But on the second side, if the function of your art has changed, you need to either make peace with that, and then the whole thing fundamentally changes, and then you sell out, is what it's known as, or you don't. And I think that's the last week. They had me go down. Well, not they. I was in the decision as well. There's a guy I've known for years. He's a producer, and he produces huge bands, pop bands, rock bands. Just so I don't sound like that guy. I mean, the guy sold millions of records in the past 10 years, millions. And he says, hey, you've got credibility, so I want to write a song with you. Come to L.A. and we'll write a song. So last week I went to L.A. and I recorded this song with this guy. And it's a rock song, and it's not me. It's this version of me that's sellable. And I'm profoundly uncomfortable with it. Yeah, so now, if I don't put it out, it's my choice, I lose a bunch of money. Big deal. If I do put it out, it's a huge decision. And I've got one side of the camp that's saying, well, in order to fund all your orchestra stuff and to do all this stuff, what is it? And so it's the whole thing right now is it's interesting. It really is. And it's complicated. It's not, again, the drama that I'm speaking of it with is more based on just an acknowledgement that it is a dramatic period.
Of course. Oh, absolutely.
But really, what now? And I think that for me, again, going back to Z2 and why I think it's a success for me is because I didn't phone it in. I didn't cop out in the last minute. It was something that I was uncomfortable with Sky Blue, very uncomfortable with it. So I got rid of a bunch of songs, replaced it with a bunch of other, and made it a sentiment, about the depression, about death, and about all these things that essentially its inherent function as a record is to say, well, you can work through it. You can work through it. It's not the end of things, right? And then with The Dark Matters, it was how can you be uncompromisingly free while at the same time being completely reined in by every conceivable part of your life? But it worked in my mind. It worked, but it's a confusing listen. So moving forward at this stage, right now, everything that I've done, I can back. Everything. There's nothing I've done that I can say, oh, I regret this or I regret that. And so all of a sudden, if I did put out a song, I haven't heard it yet. I haven't heard the mix. They're still trying to mix it. If I do put it out and I hate it, and all of a sudden it's popular, and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of other people, on one level it's easy to think, oh, okay, well, you'd go off and make orchestras and puppet shows and all this shit. But would you? Or would you go get your teeth fixed, start lifting weights every day so you can look good around other people that have shiny teeth and all this shit? And it's like, so these decisions are ones that I never anticipated having to make. And on the surface, of course, it's an easy decision, right? It's like, you stay true to yourself and you make your art and you function as you always have. But there's another part of my brain that's not saying you're a piece of shit, you deserve to fail. There's another part of my brain that says you're afraid of your own power.
Yes.
And so you're sabotaging anything deemed as out of this really strict thing that you've created for yourself as being bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it must be an absolutely impossible call to make. And I think it's all about summing up whether or not you could, if you did release it and you didn't like it, whether you could kind of box that off enough in your mind to be happy with stuff that came as a product of it.
That would be it. So it's not necessarily an incredibly difficult position as much as just if you have a clear mind. If I have a clear mind, which I do, you know what I mean? I'm not on drugs. I'm not drinking. I take care of myself. I've got a pretty logical connection to my life, at least. Maybe not my art, but my life. Then I think that as long as I'm moving forward, the decisions that I make will be the right ones. I just got to make sure at every step that the motivations for them aren't strictly based on finances, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's easy to do. It's like you've been kind of eating shit and, hacking things together for 25 years. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, it would be nice. But at the same time, then it's strapping again. It's like, well, then if you're going to do that, why don't you just do strapping? I'm like, well, because I don't want to. And so so I'm saying this to you, and of course, when this interview comes out, but I gotta give up on that shit too. I do what I do, and I talk as I talk, and that's it. Whatever people want to think of me is fine, right? But honestly, the reason V2 is the way it is because of these thoughts, and these thoughts are how I function. So fuck it, right? Maybe it's just narcissism on such a profound level that it's entertaining by proxy.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think anything.
I hope not.
No,
I hope
I
not.
don't.
That would be fucking disgusting.
No, I was talking to Danny from Anathema actually last week, and we were talking because they've been around for quite a while now, and they were saying that lately things have I don't know how much you know of Anathema. I know that he does some stuff with Annika. But they've been going from strength to strength lately, and again, they're like you when it comes to, they're very, very much real and very much we don't want this to be about us, we want it to be about our music. And there seems to be such a resurgence at the moment in people following people that seem honest.
And Andy Farrow. Because Anathema's Andy Farrow as well.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I've never spoken to him.
Well, Andy Farrow is the reason why my career is where it's at right now.
Seriously?
I mean, other than my hard work, of course. And he does Anathema. I talked to Danny when we were doing the prog cruise. They're about to sign with them, and they said, "What do you think of this decision?" I said, "If you want to take the next step, that's who you go with." And so, Andy's management is pinnacle to the amount of things that has happened to me, and of course with Anathema too.
Wow.
But I mean, you see, within that parameter, you have to decide how much of it you want, because Andy's a good person. He's not a malicious character. He's a good guy. So but he's Andy. He'll push and push and push and push and push. But as soon as I say, Andy, no, he goes, okay. Unless it's something that's going to screw it up. Because his idea is, he works great with, is you do something in order to catapult the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So everything acts as another step towards it. You do the Roundhouse, then you do Brixton, then you do Royal Albert, and then where do you go from there? But on the strength of the prior one, you get to the next one. And that type of management is, the guy's brilliant. He's brilliant. But at the same time, it's like, it puts you as an artist in a position where you're like, you have to make a decision here. How far do you want to go? Because if you've got people around you, not just Andy, but labels and everything in a musical world that is floundering, it's easy to think, well, this should be a natural progression. But the thing that allows me, and I'm sure Anathema and anybody else who functions in that way to function, is that, you're pretty empathetic towards your audience and yourself and your surroundings. And if you do something that you're uncomfortable with, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not as simple as just like, oh, okay, I did that. It was a good experience. Let's move on. And that's not that simple, for me at least.
Mm.
So But here's the thing: is the position that I got myself in career-wise is the position that I put myself in, and I'm very happy. Man, everything that's going on in my world is fucking awesome. I'm so stoked. But it's forced me to think about it in ways that I've never had to before. So it's like, holy crap, people are like, well, what do you do for publishing? I'm like, I have no idea. What do you do for this? What about salary? What about, contracts? And I'm just like, I've never had to think about this shit ever.
Wow.
So it's a case of playing catch up, trying to learn how to do all this stuff. And I mean, it's not easy, but, and this is probably what I'll end this with, if you can do it, then you could do anything you want. So it's a matter of seeing if you've got the balls to follow it where it wants to lead you while still being able to know when to say no, right?
Yes. Yeah, completely.
And if you don't, it's your own fault. It's not Andy's fault. It's not the label's fault. It's not the audience's fault. It's your fault. So as a result of that, I find for me, now's the time where it's just, you got to think. You got to really stand back and put the pieces together and process it in a way that your next steps are ones that are in line with it all. Because I want to do awesome things. I want to do massive stuff with the Field Toy or my own thing. I also want to do casualties. I also want to play bass. I also want to go to the beach. I mean, all these things are like considerations, right? And so the fastest way to trying to find yourself functional is, at this point at least, just taking stock, right?
Definitely, and making sure that you're only ever saying no for the right reasons.
Exactly. And that, it's never as simple as that. I mean, it's like, I know that when I ramble in interviews, people are just like, fuck, why is it so complicated with this idiot? And I'm thinking to myself, because my thought is it's the motivation behind the decision. Why do you do that? Why is it a simple thing? Oh, I don't fucking care. It's not the decision that's important. It's why you made the decision. It's not the music that's important. It's why the music exists that's important. It's the function of the decision, the choice. So it's just a whole bunch of new choices and a whole lot of new thinking that up to this point has not even existed. So now I'm like, whoa, holy crap, man. Like you just said, it's you got to be strong enough to say no, but you also got to be strong enough to know that you're saying no for a reason that isn't based in some sort of adolescent bullshit, right?
Yes. Yeah, completely and utterly.
Like, I don't want to. Why? Well, because you told me to.
So I'm going to sit here, I'm going to stamp my feet, and I'm going to say no, even though I'd enjoy it. No.
That's it. Exactly. It's the right decision, though, and it would be really good for you. Well, yeah, but,
Don't care.
You do the same
Don't
thing.
care.
I don't care. Whatever.
Gonna sit here, gonna play Xbox, not moving.
That's it. It's going really well for me. Oh, good. It seems like a perfect time for me to say, I can't do it anymore. Sorry, guys. No, sorry. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's what that's what D2's about.
Oh, fantastic. No, it's just everything about it is wonderful, and it's even better to hear where it's come from. But I'm really glad you're happy with it. It would be such a disappointment if after all this you were just like, you know what, I don't like it.
I'm thrilled with it. It's just, I'm insecure about it because it's peculiar. But specifically when people have such projections on what they think you should be at this point, or what Zilkhood should be, or what it is or what it isn't. I'm incredibly proud of it. It's exactly right. It's just, is it going to be the coolest thing in your world?
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to chat to you, like, as always. It really has.